Chloe and I are here to share with you why we believe arguments for inclusion should be based on gain, not pity. I am a linguistic being, and my having of language biases my view of the world. I'll be presenting verbally. Chloe is a sensory being. Her view of the world is just as biased as my own, and she will be presenting through her expression and presence here today. And a linguistic being is just somebody who has acquired and uses language to experience and frame meaning. And a sensory being is a person whose primary experience of the world and meaning within it is sensory. And Chloe and I are each just one example of two very diverse groups. So, I believe that pity erodes life. That's how I signed off my first letter of application to teach children with severe and profound special educational needs and disabilities. And when I was called to interview, I was told that I had been invited there not because of my professional qualifications or personal experience, but because they'd wanted to see if I had really written that letter. My lack of pity for the people I work on behalf of at the Sensory Projects does not stem from a lack of understanding. I regularly meet children who lead foreshortened lives. I witness the struggles they face, and through the window of Facebook, once those lives are over, I watch their families. And I see their parents snapped, smiling by friends at parties. The light in their eyes is gone. I watch the colour drain out of those worlds. And people ask them how they cope. People say they couldn't cope if it happened to them. They couldn't even imagine it. And for the record, I've known enough of these families now to know that coping isn't a thing they do. Coping is a thing that is done to them by the continuation of life. Beyond that first decision, not to follow your child into the grave, and that's no small one, beyond that, there is no doing. Coping happens, life happens. And so no, my lack of pity does not stem from naivety, however naive I may look. My lack of pity is down to its lack of utility. It certainly has no use in breaking down the barriers to inclusion, and we're going to explain why. Everyone lives their lives on a scale of 1 to 10, good to bad, and our scale stretches according to our experience. It's a bit like when medics attending trauma victims ask them to rate their pain from 1 to 10 and then medicate accordingly. It's very subjective, but it's very real. And when we ask someone who currently believes their life to be running at a stress level 8 to pity, we're asking them to give something they do not believe they have. And sure, a gift is being given here. We're great. Who wouldn't want to hang out with us? It's best not to check that part of the argument too closely. The gift goes both ways. How much more open would those ears be on that stressed level 8 person if instead of asking them to give, we were offering them a gift? We tend to think about the barriers to inclusion as being physical things, like ramp access and specialist wheelchairs or hearing aids or funky pieces of equipment. And these things are important. Changing places, for example. A disabled toilet is only accessible to those who can shift themselves from chair to toilet. And if you can't, then Super Josh on my slide is showing you what a disabled toilet means to you. How can it be that in 2017, in a country like ours, we are still asking for toilets for some members of our society? Just imagine, if you'd been invited here today and told how fantastic the event is going to be, just one thing to take note of before you come, the toilets will be out of action, but don't worry, because we will be handing out nappy pads on the door, and if you want to change, you can go and lie on the toilet floor to do it. You'd have still come, right? That would be fine. No? If it's not okay for you, why is it okay for somebody who uses a wheelchair? These things are important. But if we had all of these things, would that be inclusion achieved? No. The real barriers to inclusion are those of understanding and awareness. It's not a lack of ability in them, it's a lack of insight in us. And the argument for inclusion should be made based on the extraordinariness of these lives, the brilliance to the moments shared, the unique perspective they bring. You've met Chloe. We'd like to introduce you to some of her friends. This is Shannon. Shannon can teach you about joy and connection and the present moment. This is Hannah. Hannah can teach you wonder, curiosity, and persistence. And this was Harry. Harry was a super skilled communicator who used the limited set of resources he was given to communicate 1,000 things in his short life. And I'm devastated that I won't get to learn from Harry anymore. I'm not saying these things to be nice. These talents are real. When we first planned this presentation, we planned to present you with a list of reasons based on gain, not pity, why people like Chloe and her friends should be included. But we've decided not to. We're going to start the list, and we want you to continue it. And together, we will create a petition for inclusion 1,000 ideas long. So here's one to get you going. Our society goes through emotional phases, just like a person does. And currently, we are living through an age of anxiety, with nearly a quarter of the UK population reporting feeling anxious all the time. Corresponding to this rise in anxiety, we're seeing increased interest in mindfulness practice, with places as prestigious as Oxford University dedicating time to its study. Mindfulness has been shown to be a tonic for anxiety. Mindfulness is the non-judgmental attention to the present. And in the population of people who are sensory beings, we meet a great many people who lead lives of constant, non-judgmental attention to the present, and who often find those lives joyful. Thinking in this way, you quickly come up with ideas of what we all gain from inclusion. And you also realize that the line between those doing the including and those being included is distinctly blurry. Which side of the line do you fall on? Will you always fall on that side? Which side of the line do I fall on? Have you assumed that I'm neurotypical? I'm not. I'm autistic. Do we want a world where everyone is the same? A world without people with Down syndrome, without people with autism, without people with Tourette's, without, you know? The assumption that is made when trying to eliminate diversity is one of hierarchy. We assume that because some lives are different, they are necessarily better or worse than our own. In the idea that some lives for their own good should not be lived is just shockingly arrogant. You know, our lives, is your life so good that you think one's different to it should be prevented? Chloe's life is hers to live, not yours, hers to judge. She's living it and getting every ounce of life out of it. Are you doing the same with yours? Could you learn a thing or two from hanging out with Chloe? I bet no one who knows Chloe has a bad hair day and ranks it at an 8. Treat her pain, sort out her seizures, tackle medical difficulties, sure. But eliminate difference? Is that really what we want to do? Acknowledging difference does not necessarily mean the creation of a hierarchy. Difference brings gifts. As a linguistic being, I see my life in this way. And as a sensory being, Chloe views her life in this way. And when we work together to share our views, we each see more. If we try and make everyone's view the same, or try and shut people out from our way of seeing, we see less. Different and included, we gain. Different and excluded, we lose. Here's one more for the list. This one I hear a lot from people who care directly for individuals with profound disabilities, complex needs, autism, Down syndrome, Fragile X, Noonan syndrome, charge, Rett's, on and on into the swans. This is what they say. I have learned so much from them. And people find it hard to articulate this learning, but it is a stretching of the heart, an extension to one's limits, a depth of experience unanticipated, an ability to function without sleep. People give up frivolous worries and selfish preoccupations and focus on a bigger picture. And time runs out for insecurity and bad hair days. I believe when we think about inclusion, we should consider evolution and how we want progress to be measured. You have body, survival of the fittest, and as a species, we're living into our 80s, our 90s. It's done for us. So then you have mind. Commentators talk about horizontal evolution, about promoting survival through the horizontal exchange of knowledge. And we have the World Wide Web. So perhaps it's time for a third. As society diversifies, does it not call for an evolution of the soul, for an increased capaciousness of the heart, for more caring, for more awareness and understanding? Think about how you want progress to be measured. Do you want to see us becoming ever stronger and more symmetrical, or knowing more and more stuff? What about more understanding, more empathetic, more loving? When we seek to include those who are different to ourselves, no matter what that difference might be, this is the future we all gain. Our future, for ourselves and for our children, be those children neurotypical, physically typical, or otherwise. Inclusion is for everyone. Thank you for your attention.